everyone, my name is Riley, and today I'll be talking with you about the importance of replication in science. So first let's talk about this paper's intentions. So essentially it was written with the intention to study and replicate original studies that had found significant findings and to explain replication's importance to science. So one thing to note is that this is essentially the first open systematic evidence of reproducibility from a sample of studies done, like, ever. So obviously we need to take this with a grain of salt. There could be potential flaws in this as well as kinks to work out in the future. So to summarize the introduction, the authors had stated that one's noteworthiness should not be a factor for credibility, but rather to let the data speak for itself. So essentially someone's fame and, well, I guess you could say charisma, shouldn't be a factor in their credibility in the scientific field. It should be the data that they reproduce and put out there. That should. So, in keeping with this, we will be talking about problematic practices, things like selective reporting and analysis, and insufficient method sections, all led to higher likelihoods of a false positive in this study. And in the discussion section, they had stated that only 36% of replicated studies had significant results compared to the original studies that had a 97% rate of, significant results. Obviously, there is a clear disparity in the findings between original and replicated studies, and this could be in part by problematic science practices. Even whenever the original authors had approved materials, replicated the method section, and even used high-power designs, large portions of the studies didn't reproduce the replicated original study results. So clearly we can see through these percentage differences and also the practices that the replicated studies had used that there's definitely something fishy going on there. Probably some problematic science practices like harking or key hacking. And I will continue. So, the insights of the study. Basically, the authors had stated that there's multiple explanations for a successful replication and also false positives are possible, but not the only factor. So, support for replication essentially comes through multiple views, and they help rule out other factors. Things like low power, selection, and publication bias for a positive outcome formed a biased effect size in the original studies, and those were all factors. And the replicated studies don't have these biases because of open science practices like stating your hypothesis and then not being able to change it and go back and change it once you've found and completed your study. So, my thoughts on this is that the study was well done and to the point. I believe replication in open science is vital to basically backing up your findings, and it helps you to get unique viewpoints. And essentially, open science helps not only to lower the risk of a false positive, and also obviously lessens bad science practices, but it also helps sharing methodology sections, as well as showing other people across the globe that, hey, this is the study that I've done. Here's the methodology section, here's the materials that I used. It lays everything out for you, and someone halfway across the globe could replicate it and give you a different viewpoint that could essentially help factor out different things that you didn't think to do in your study. So to me, the passion in the authors was very obvious. They were clearly doing this for the love of science and the betterment of the field, as well as good science practices, and not just to say, this person's wrong, these studies are wrong. It was very clear to me that they were doing this for the betterment of the community and to help get open science practices in the open. The problem, though, is incentivizing them. It's very difficult to incentivize open science practices, but as we've seen in class, there are obviously little badges that you can get for using open scientific practices, but we still have a ways to go. Okay, so some discussion questions I have. What are some other problem practices that can make false positives? What are your thoughts on the low reproducibility rates in the original studies? And what are your thoughts on open science? And what are some good practices aside from a method section that can eliminate false positives? And can you think of any other ways to incentivize open science among researchers? Alright everyone, thank you for listening.